Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Trev Talks. I'm Trevor Yong, your host of Aura, and I'm delighted to have John Avolio, Value Chain Manager at Nova Chemicals with me. Hi John.
Hey Trevor, how are you today?
I'm doing great, delighted to have you along to the pod. We've got to know each other over the last couple of years, connected at different events and on LinkedIn. And I'm really excited to have you here because I always like different perspectives. And the first thing I want to ask you is about your role at Nova. What is a value chain manager?
It's a really great question, and one that I probably asked myself 5 years ago when I took on the role. Value chain manager at Nova Chemicals really is focusing on our brand owner, retailer engagements, partnerships. And so when you think of, a resin supplier, we tend to be at the start of the value chain. Our customers, who are the converters of the industry, those that are taking pellets and turning them into packaging, tend to be in the middle, and then our brand owners and CPG partners tend to be at the end of the value chain. And that's really where my focus is making sure that as they have needs, we are fulfilling them. But the other aspect of this that's so important for us in the data that we gain is understanding really what they want, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, so we can backfill our R&D efforts and be ready when they are ready to commercially launch for their consumer needs.
Oh, fantastic. So you get to do that exciting bit, right? You're getting to know what's of interest to the client base, and you can then bring that information back to Nova and say, right, this is the trend, this is what people are interested in. How do we make it happen?
You're absolutely right. I get to see trends before they happen. Certainly, I get to get some insights as to what organizations are looking to achieve, and hopefully we either have a solution off the shelf, or if not, we have the opportunity to build it from the ground up. One of the things that I think was so eye-opening to me was, if you are creating a new plastic resin to meet an ultimate goal, whether that's barrier, or when you drop something you don't want it to burst open, just being able to see through a package without any obscurity, that development can take 3 to 5 years to go from initial concept to commercialization. So if we have an idea as to what our customers are looking for, even further down the value chain, we have the opportunity to manage that time frame much better, and bring products to market a lot quicker.
I've just got loads of questions firing my mind, so I'm going to try and peg them all so I don't forget them. But tell me a little bit about Nova then. What makes Nova different and special about itself in the industry?
Yeah, really great question. So Nova Chemicals, which is the organization that most would recognize, or the name that most would recognize, is one of the largest producers of polyethylene in North America. We have the capability of producing greater than 5 billion pounds of polyethylene on an annual basis. But what really sets us apart, and really one of the largest focuses that I focus on, is our strength in the area of food packaging. And so our manufacturing sites, our expertise, our resources, our lab equipment is really, a dedicated area of focuses to food packaging. And so when new innovation does come out in food packaging, it is very likely that a large portion of that came from Nova Chemicals. So that really satisfies the area of virgin plastic, and what we're really focused on in that area is continuing to develop areas of packaging that is monomaterial, for instance, that can be recycled in traditional recycling streams. The other area that Nova has ventured into in the last, let's call it 3 to 4 years, is what's called Nova Circular Solutions. And so that really is encompassing a lot of our mechanical recycling efforts. And so we're really excited to announce that we have a new facility starting up in 2025 that will bring really dedicated source of linear low density polyethylene, recycled linear low density polyethylene, to the market. And what's really a differentiator in this space is our focus on food contact compliance. And so we will be bringing one of the first streams streams of food contact compliant linear low density polyethylene into the recycled space. And we do feel like that's going to be a game changer for many of our brand partners.
That sounds super exciting, especially in the kind of the situation we find ourselves in, where there is such a demand for innovative product that helps deliver the product, but is also recyclable, sustainable. How does this link in then with something like how to recycle, where you've got consumer messaging around recyclability of packaging?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I mean, the ultimate holy grail of of packaging is to create one that is circular. And so our definition of circular is one that is not only recyclable, but also incorporates in an amount of post-consumer recyclate as well. And one of the biggest challenges is to talk about, what is the definition of recyclable packaging? And so traditionally, recyclable packaging is that packaging which can go into a curbside program, but that tends to limit your ability to rigid products, ones that are more monomaterial based in a rigid format. And so, food packaging, although there is a subsection that obviously fits very well into that category, a lot of food packaging tends to be flexible. And so, the How to Recycle program, I think, is a fantastic opportunity to be able to get flexible packaging into the recycling stream through the store drop-off programs. I think it is an important first step. There's a ton of education taking place right now in certainly in the United States on how to, get consumers to understand that their flexible packaging doesn't necessarily go in their curbside bin, but does need to go back to the store, and really trying to create that circle so that when it does get into the store drop-off programs, it finds its way to a responsible MRF, and then also back into the circular stream. So we're kind of helping that along in a few different pathways, but it's certainly a journey.
Yeah, and I'm curious as well with the rise of EPR in North America, how your products are going to help organizations with those liabilities, and how do you see that working?
It's a fantastic question, and it's one that's ever evolving. Oregon will be the first one that launches EPR. It's coming up in just a matter of months that one will essentially go live. And really, again, we're looking at it from a two-prong approach. And so it's trying to satisfy their need to make their packaging recyclable or designed for recyclable through programs that might exist in Oregon. And then the other aspect, and maybe a longer term for many of these states, is the incorporation of PCR back into their packaging. Along with that comes also, the opportunities for lightweighting and right sizing many of these packages. And so that's really where an organization like Nova, I think, is really well positioned to satisfy. So we not only are the experts in the polyethylene world, which helps organizations, lightweight, bringing out new polyethylene resins to be able to minimize, the amount of layers in packaging, to create monomaterial structures, to design towards recyclability or store drop-off programs, but then also to incorporate in the PCR as well. And that tends to be one that, is the challenge. Most organizations might choose one path or the other, but we have the opportunity to help many organizations actually go with both pathways towards the recyclability as well as the incorporation.
Here's a quick message from our sponsor, Aura. This podcast is brought to you by Aura, bringing together leading consultancy, pioneering technology, and data-led insights to help organizations meet environmental compliance and manage sustainability every day.
So just to bring this back to you on a personal level, did you ever think that you'd end up being an expert in polyethylene?
In polyethylene, maybe. So my degree is actually in plastics engineering, and so I chose this field quite some time ago on purpose. But I actually started my career in polypropylene. And so I laugh about it in that, my first foray into the plastics industry was actually in biaxially oriented polypropylene, and essentially creating new resins to develop structures for candy bars and potato chip wraps and pouches. I then functioned into a role that really focused on caps and closures. So anything that twists off of a bottle, for instance, that incorporated polypropylene. So that was the start of my career. I then transitioned into polyethylene, where I joke that I've spent the last decade or so undoing everything that I did in the start of my career. So it's now transitioning into biaxially oriented polyethylene and ethylene based closures on bottles. But yes, always very interested in the polyolefin world, and really just seeing what is new, what is that next need or that next new advancement of innovation, and really just trying to be on the forefront of that has always been a focus for me.
Yeah, that's very cool. I have to say, I'm from a slightly different stock. You're an expert. You're clearly very learned in it, and I kind of fell into the industry, and I've stayed here because it is fantastic, right? I'm very fortunate to be in it, but I never expected I would spend my career in environment and sustainability. Um, I'm interested then, because of your role and because of Nova being such an innovator, you are therefore at the forefront of these types of trends, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of the bits of work that Aura are currently working on is the future of packaging towards 2050, right? So I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm curious. You get to talk to some of the most influential brands and retailers in North America, if not the world. What do you see happening in the packaging world over the next couple of decades?
It's a really great question, and one that I think again is ever evolving. But I don't think that we're going to see any minimization in the area of designing packaging that is monomaterial to help with recycling. I mean, that tends to be kind of in the area of virgin packaging. That next frontier is to really take what is there and adopt it across numerous different formats. We're always going to have some of those markets that are going to be challenged. And so, meat packaging, for instance, tends to be one that comes to mind. But there are opportunities to be able to work with those industries to try to help them, find solutions. I think the other area that is just, ripe for adoption and innovation is in PCR incorporation. And so, where do we see the innovation in that area? It really is on feedstock allocation. Where do you find some of these streams that will allow you to utilize these materials into food contact compliant opportunities? And really, I think the final or maybe the next generation of PCR is really in the area of organoleptics. Not many people realize that there is a differing taste and odor profile amongst different feedstocks of waste. And so to really try to minimize that as much as possible is a lot of chemistry. And it's a lot of innovation, manufacturing innovation that takes place to try to bring some of those solutions to light. And so that's really what I think excites me at this point is the opportunity to create these circular pathways where we as humans don't recognize any difference between them, but even more so that next group is that our pets don't recognize any difference. And that I think in the last 4 years has probably been the one eye opener that I had was dogs and cats have much better taste and odor profiles than we do, and they can tell a difference if you incorporate in a feed of PCR that might have a different taste or odor profile. And so that really is that defining gem to be able to say that you passed many of these organoleptic tests for pets. That is a real goal, and one that I hope that Nova Circular Solutions will be able to satisfy.
That's fascinating, and I'm adding a new word to my dictionary: organoleptics. Uh, just give us a 20-second explanation of what that means, please, John.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. No, thank you. I always talk in these either abbreviations or words that I'm so accustomed to. But yes, organoleptics is essentially your taste and odor profile of any particular resin. And so, even virgin resins, we do odor panels to determine whether or not there is a taste or an odor from one manufacturing process to another. And this is even more important as we enter into the realm of PCR. And so as you are, thinking about, the milk jug stream, for instance, that, is obviously probably one of the most recognized feedstock streams of the recycled world. I mean, this does tend to have, not every consumer is washing out their milk jug, and it could have spoiled milk in it. Now that is a really high level example of how some of these, off tastes or off odors could potentially get into your recycling stream. Again, a very elementary kind of explanation on that particular odor, but that is what we're talking about from an organoleptic perspective. It's, is there an off odor or an off taste that comes from any particular stream?
Great. I'm really pleased I've learned about that actually. And I spent 10 years in waste management and collecting waste. And of course, I was interested in how PCR would then be adopted into the industry, into the packaging industry. But at no point did someone say to me, Trevor, what is actually the composition of that plastic waste? And how is it going to affect the taste profile for a dog? So I'm connecting some really interesting dots, and I'm now thinking about my dog and wondering maybe that's why he didn't eat this batch of dry pet food this week. Cool, really interesting. So, John, when I follow you on LinkedIn, there's a couple of things that really fascinate me about the work you're doing. One, whenever the new Ellen MacArthur Foundation report comes out, you start to analyze that information, and your insights are really interesting. And two, you seem to be really busy with something called Bob's Store. And I'm just curious, I think people would be really interested to hear about those two topics.
Absolutely. Yeah, on the first one, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation data. I mean, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I think, is a fantastic organization that really does provide transparency to the industry as to the progress that, in our case, we track between 21 and 23 different CPG companies on their year over year progress. And what comes from that is a lot of trend analysis. So, what we're seeing from this is, and again, at this stage, it's probably not much of a surprise, but those organizations that are focused in either the PET world, so a lot of the soda companies, or in the HDPE world, so a lot of the personal care or laundry care industry tends to be doing better than those that are in traditional food packaging in achieving their sustainability aspirations. And it makes sense why that is. These tend to be monomaterial rigid structures, so easier to recycle through the curbside program. And on the other end of circularity, there are existing markets for PET and HDPE, and so they tend to have higher numbers associated with their overall aspirations than others. But what it does afford us the opportunity is to recognize where there are gaps and what a company like Nova Chemicals can do to hopefully fill some of those gaps, whether it is on the PCR side or on the resin, the virgin resin side to make monomaterial structures to help with their or help catch up with their recyclability goals. So yes, a lot of the work from EMF is helpful in trying to identify those gaps and where we might be successful across the value chain and in helping that. One of the examples that we created in the last 2 years was Bob's Grocery Store, which you identified. And so this actually started as a pet project, and I laughed. This pet project, literally I was taking money from my travel budget in order to, while I was on the road to, buying a soda bottle here, or, an example of a cool innovative new package in Brazil, for instance. And it has really evolved into something that is, taking a large portion of my time in a very positive way. And what it is, it's a space where we have curated every single product in that space to create a conversation about packaging. And so it's not an environment where we're identifying right versus wrong, but it's an environment where we're really just opening up, the opportunity to discuss successful pathways towards some of these goals and aspirations. Or we do talk about markets which are going to be challenged in creating sustainable packaging or circular packaging. And then we do have an entire area, and we're very blessed to have great relationships with a number of CPGs that'll tell us, hey, next week we're launching a new package. You might want to go out and buy all the old ones that you can find. And we do have old versus new, and it shows the transition across their circular packaging journey. And I think for me, having developed this, and we're starting to get it on the road now, and it's not becoming just an internal Nova grocery store education center. We're getting it on the road now, and we're going to a number of different conferences. And the one that is probably the conversation that I had most recently that was eye-opening was resource recycling. I was in Louisville, APR's conference, and we had a woman that came into the space that immediately walked in, and she was a decision maker for a local municipality, and said, "Oh, this is all just really examples of non-recyclable plastic packaging," and she had a very negative view on plastic in general. And I said, "Well, let's walk through this space, and we're going to have that conversation." And we stopped at health and beauty, and then into our dry goods, and then into produce, and then meat, and finally in the roadmap of transition. And you could see that she was starting the gears were starting to turn, and she was starting to have a change of thought. And at the end, she had said, I came into this space thinking plastic equals bad, and what I'm realizing after walking through this space is that that's not true. Recycling is not broken. Plastic recycling is not broken. It's just there is a education that comes along with it, and there is a messaging that comes along with it, which you're staring at numerous examples of good and also bad messaging, and they're fighting each other. And so once you actually understand what the rules of recycling are and how you can participate in that, you do realize that overall plastic packaging is not a bad thing. It does have its place in the industry, and it was just really nice to see her change her point of view at the end of that, and come out of that saying, you know what, plastic is not a bad packaging format.
I can imagine just how rewarding that is, right? Because we do live in quite a polarized society sometimes, and everyone's built up their opinions through learning from friends and family and school and specific teachers and people that they admire, etc. And we can all go to a conference and we can all say that we want to help the environment, right? As just a standard catch-all. But actually, we also get paid by people, right? We get paid by people to understand plastics, or we look at pulp, and we all have a paymaster ultimately. And I think that the challenge there is to try and create an agnostic and factual view. And
Absolutely.
that, I think, is a problem whatever industry you work in, whether it's packaging or anything else. But I love that you're able to gently educate. It's not, I'm going to dictate to you what the answer is. It's here's just some alternative viewpoints, and it can help people come to their own conclusions.
Absolutely.
I think we've all seen how much talk there's been about plastic, and it does tend to be, if we just Google it, negative. And I as an organization that is absolutely agnostic, we get frustrated by it because sometimes plastic is absolutely the best mode of delivering a quality product to the consumer, and people just get turned off because they hear the word plastic, and
It's
I don't think
true.
that's very fair. Just coming round to the sort of the tail of what's been a really great conversation. You're doing some really exciting stuff. And what I'm interested in is, what do you want to leave behind? Like when you get to the end of this phase of your career, or even to the end of your career, what do you want to leave for your kids as sort of your legacy in the packaging world?
It's a really great question. I appreciate that. You know, I think to talk about my legacy, I probably have to talk about my past, right? And where did the industry kind of come from? And where one of my favorite movies growing up was Home Alone. I absolutely loved that movie. It was, one of those just fantastically written and acted movies. Really excited that my kids have now, kind of adopted it as one of their favorite movies as well. And there's a scene from that movie that just I use over and over again in presentations, and it's when Kevin is shopping at the grocery store alone, and he's walking through the aisles, and I use that scene quite regularly. And the reason I use that is because as he's walking through the aisles, and this is the year 1990, so we're talking, 35 years ago, as he's walking through those aisles, if you look at the packaging that's on the grocery store shelf 35 years ago, you would make the assumption. I mean, if you think about the car that you were driving 35 years ago, there's been a significant amount of innovation. If you think about, the computer, if you had one 35 years ago, there's been significant innovation. We don't live the same life that we did 35 years ago, but when you look at the packaging on the store shelf in that scene, it is absolutely identifiable, the majority of which is still the same packaging that we're using today. And so that to me is kind of that growth, and really where I want to leave the industry as I look at the latter half of my career is, how do we take this packaging that's 35 years old and get it into the next generation? And a lot of that has to do with consumer behaviors, to be honest with you, right? I mean, I laugh about it, but there is some truth to it. How many people have looked at a package of hot dogs, for instance, and said, "Oh, I'm not buying this package of hot dogs because I don't like the look of that one Frank," right? Or I'm buying this box of pasta, and it has a transparent window, and I'm not going to buy it because I don't like the way that one piece of pasta looks. I mean, I would think, and I might be in the minority, but I would think that the majority would say, I don't even really pay attention to those things. And so why do we still have them, right? And the desire to be able to see your food before you buy it does create a complication to create recyclable packaging. So it's these little tiny changes that I think that we can do as just a consumer base, to ratify that it's okay to make these changes over the course of the next 5 years, and that we're comfortable with it. And I think really where I would love to see the industry as a whole going is from a single use item, which we've had for the last 35 years, into one that is circular. And so that's not only creating your packaging, which is monomaterial, so it can have an easier pathway through the recycling industry or the recycling stream, but then to incorporate that packaging back in its second life and create a circular pack. When I look across the full scale of the industry today, these options do exist. In terms of the innovation exists, but there's very few that have true circular packaging. Even today, many people have packaging which is recyclable, either through store drop-off programs or through curbside. And then there are others that have adopted PCR incorporation, but there are very few that have still joined the two together and created a circular package. So I do see that as a huge opportunity in the next 5 years to adopt, either of those principles for whichever your starting point was. And then I do think, 5+ years from now, that's just going to be commonplace and a necessity. Now we're going to have things like EPR that's going to help, create the demand for that. And I think that is something that will be necessary to create that demand. But the innovation exists now, and I think we just need to now get it into a commercial standpoint.
That's great, John. I really appreciate how candid you've been. I've learned a huge amount, and it's given me a lot to think about because I'm sort of slightly removed from the detail and the knowledge that you've got. Um, our last part of the podcast is always to ask our guests to teach me one more thing. And as I say, I've learned a lot already. But is there one specific fact that you would like me to go away from this conversation remembering, even if it's something that is quite topical right now?
Yeah. I think the one fact that I just doing the Ellen MacArthur Foundation deep dive internally, we were reviewing the progress at the industry again of those 21 to 23 organizations that we track. What has their progress been in incorporating PCR into their packaging? And I think a lot of people would be surprised to see how much the industry has grown in even the last 2 years. So when we take a look at the self-reported numbers, again, full transparency across the EMF, these are publicly available numbers. But when we take a look at them, essentially of those 21 to 23 organizations, they have incorporated an additional 1.17 billion pounds of recycled materials into their packaging. I think that to me is such a wake up call that you don't hear a lot of this development. You might think that it's still on the periphery of innovation, but it's happening. It absolutely is happening. It's occurring. You're starting to see a lot of really great messaging on packaging of incorporating this material back in, and to see growth of 1 billion pounds in 2 years. I mean, that's enormous. And industries. This is what industries are built off of. So I think the investment is there. You're going to see much more of this. You're seeing the demand, and so I think really from an education standpoint, I think it's the identification that this is taking place now. This is reality, and it will do nothing but continue to grow.
Thank you, John. Wow, that's a lot of pounds. 1.17 billion pounds. It's kind of unfathomable, isn't it? Thanks, John, for joining us on Trev Talks this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trevor. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to Trev Talks. If you'd like to be featured, or you've got a question you'd like us to discuss in the next Trev Talks episode, simply drop me an email using the email address in our show notes. Trev Talks is brought to you by Aura. Aura brings together sustainable packaging consultancy, pioneering technology, and expert-led insights to positively impact your business and our planet. Find out more about how Aura is helping leading businesses to achieve their sustainability objectives. Go to www.aura-consultants.com.